Rolling. 3, 2, 1. Action. Welcome to the Hóčhoka podcast.
Hello, Matakiapi, and welcome to Hóčhoka, here at the center of the St. Joseph's Indian School campus. I'm Scott Wooster. I'm today's host, and we're glad you have joined us. And we're going to hear once again from our student coordinator, Jennie Schilling, who is here to talk to us and help us through difficulties that we might have with our kids. And we think this could be helpful for our parents and folks who are listening to us today. Jennie Schilling is here to talk with us about kid whispering. If you're the adult in the situation, how should an adult handle themselves in a situation where a kid's having difficulty and you want to work through that problem?
Right. I think the biggest thing is calm. You have to go in calm. Because if you come in and you're hyped up and you're still out of control, that's not going to help the situation at all. So calm would be the biggest thing. You need to be ready to listen because this is the kid's story. We need to listen to them. And you need to remember too, if they are still in a heightened state, if they're still angry or screaming or hollering or just sitting quietly with their head down, they may not be ready to listen to you, and that's okay. So give them a little bit more space. Come back and check on them another 5 minutes, and it's okay. They don't have to answer you right away, so remember that. And the other huge thing too is leave your issues, your problems in the other room. Because when you work with kids, I don't care where you're at or who you are, they know your buttons, and they're going to push them. And a lot of times when you're dealing with kids in a heightened state, in a crisis situation, they're going to push your buttons. So you have to be able to leave that stuff outside and process, as best you can. If you start getting and you can feel that your stuff is starting to get in the middle of that, then you just say, let's just take a break and go get yourself back together before you process.
Right.
Yeah. So calm, listen, and make sure your stuff is off the table.
Yep. Make it about the kid,
exactly.
not about you.
Yep.
And that's one of the things I think you guys do so well in the training. So, Jennie, we talked about CPI a little bit, and the other acronym that I threw out was LSCI.
Yep.
Can you tell me what that stands for? It's a quiz.
LSCI is Life Space Crisis Intervention. So with LSCI, there are like 6 different behavior stages that you kind of look for. The main one that we have here at St. Joe's is the red flag one. So that basically is an explosion of emotion without any, you don't see it coming. For example, you could be asking a kid in your classroom, can you sharpen your pencil? And they may explode on you, and you're not for sure why. Or if they're in the home and you ask them to do something simple, vacuum the floor or whatever, they may just all of a sudden have an explosion on you, and you're like, whoa, But most of the time when they do that, and I don't know, I can't say for sure that they say, okay, here's what I'm going to explode, because I think the emotion just comes out when it comes out. But it's with people who they can trust, and they know that in the long run, they're not going to hold this behavior against them. So even though they exploded on you, they know that you're going to work through it with them, and you're not going to hold it against them, and you're still going to care about them in the end. And that's the biggest thing, I think. And these problems, these explosions come from something that has been on the student's mind, and they haven't worked through it for some reason, haven't talked about it, they've kept it inside, they haven't processed, and all of a sudden it hits a nerve, and boom, there it is for everybody. And as adults we go through that too, but you just have an explosion and you're like, oh man. So then we process through that, and that's the LSCI process. After they have that explosion, then we step in to put our LSCI hat on and walk the kids through what happened and try to figure out and teach them new skills so that they can better deal with it next time. The other one that we see here a lot of the times is the new tools one, which basically are students who think they're doing okay, they're trying to make friends, they're trying to fit in, but the way they're doing it isn't quite right. For example, we had a student here several years ago, and his social skills weren't the best yet, And so he would always like pick on the other kids, or like poke them with a pencil, or just be in their conversations all the time. And they'd ask him several times, stop, stay out of my space, please don't do that, whatever. And he just wasn't able to pick up on those cues. And so we had to work with him, and he ended up getting consequences. And the big thing, the big thing was he got it from his peers too. He could learn lessons from his peers. We would have to talk with him through that. Well, why do you think that she yelled at you when you poked her in the arm with a pencil or something like that? So it's a big, long process, and sometimes it can take 5 or 10 minutes, especially with the little ones. With the older ones, it's such a difference when you process through, because there's so many different levels to reach. With the older students, like 7th, 8th grade, high school. But it's pretty neat to walk a student through that, from the drain off, which is usually the beginning, all the way back down to the transfer of training, getting them back into where they need to be.
Okay. And those are phases of this too, the drain off?
They are.
Okay.
They are. So once you are in a crisis situation and you're working through a situation, the very first thing is drain off. So a lot of times we deal with kids that are angry for whatever reason, or they might have had an explosion, they might be screaming and yelling, they might be banging or kicking, they might be sitting quietly with their head down. It just all depends on how they show their emotion. But that's the drain off phase. So you need to give them time to get that all off their chest, And sometimes, again, it takes a couple minutes. Sometimes it takes an hour. I mean, I've had kids sit in my office half a day before they're ready to talk. And I think as an adult, you need to remember, that's okay.
Right.
They need that time. You try to delve into something with them before they're ready, it's not going to be effective. So the drain off is, and you'll know when they're done. You'll know when they're done by asking them, how you doing? You think you're ready to talk? Do you need more time? Can I get you water? Any of that kind of stuff, just to kind of help them relax. And the other thing is, always validate their feelings. Always validate their feelings. Because they need to know these feelings are okay. These behaviors that are attached with it, maybe not. Okay, so let's talk about how we can figure out how to deal with those feelings better. So then the second phase, once you get them drained off, you go into the timeline. And basically that is, tell me what happened. And then you listen. And you can ask questions along the way. If you don't understand something specifically, rephrase it to them. And they'll tell you, no, Jennie, that's not what I said. They'll tell you that. And so, but it assures them that you're listening when you give them that feedback. And then the next step is the central issue. The next couple ones you don't always get to right away. It's usually something over time that you get to. But central issue is the next one. And like with a red flag, it might be a little easier to get to a central issue, because you would talk to the kid about, okay, so were you really that angry over sharpening your pencil? Or is there something going on here? Is there something else? And sometimes they'll give you a hint that there's something else going on. I'm always a big person that says, if there's something going on and you don't want to talk to me about it, that's okay. Let's find somebody who to talk to. I refer them to you guys, the counseling, field, the FSCs, a lot of the time, because a lot of times some of that stuff is pretty deep and they don't want to get into it with, me, which is fine. And again, if they don't want to tell you all that stuff, as long as they have another adult that they can, that's okay. But you want to encourage them to get that off their chest.
Yes.
The next step would be insight. And that's basically getting them to come around to the fact that, oh, I really wasn't mad at you. I was mad because this happened. I just happened to take it out on you. So that's where we want them to get. And that's another tricky cycle. You're not going to do that in one sitting. You're not going to do that, in a couple sittings. That's something that time after time after time, and everybody's on the same page and working with that kid through that, just to get that insight. The next one would be new skills. And so you just want to make sure that you talk about what could you do differently next time. You want to, remember, you can talk to the teacher, you can talk to the house parent. There's plenty of adults here. what other things can you do? And a lot of times it'll be, well, I could walk away from the situation. Yep, you could do that. I could, and they can. And that's the best thing is if they can come up with some stuff, because then you got real buy-in. If they're going to come up with the solutions of how to deal with things, because if I come up with it, they can shake their head and say yes, but they're not going to be as bought into it as if it's their own idea. And I'll be honest with you, kids have great ideas.
Yeah.
Kids come up with the greatest things that I would never even think of that could work for them. So listen to them and kind of incorporate it. And I always tell them too, let's try this. If it doesn't work, come back and let me know, or I'll check in on you in a couple days, and then we can brainstorm from there.
Yeah.
And so then after you go through all that, and they're settled, and you've got that settled, and you got the transfer of training. And basically that's just getting them back into the flow of what's going on. Making sure that they're stable, making sure their emotions are in check, that they're doing okay, having a plan for if things start to escalate again. Having a plan is, here's what you can do, and here's what you're going back into. Are you ready? How do you make it up with your teacher, or how do you make it up with the kid that you pushed, or whatever it was, and have all that in line. And then if they're ready and they can say they're ready, then you get them back into the flow so they can go back to being a kid.
So I think we've had many students that LSCI, CPI has helped in a lot of different ways. I have one in particular that I'm thinking of who made a drastic improvement based on some of these interventions. He was a kid that you spent a lot of time with when he first came to school and did for a while. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Student?
When they come in, you got to remember they're all good kids. There's just, you got to peel back the layers to get to some of that sometime. And he was one of those kids. We had to take, and it was years. I mean, it was years that took us to see some of that inner stuff. He came in as a very angry child. He would have trouble in the classroom if he would be redirected or told, no, that's not right, or you can't do that right now. He would be very angry, banging on desks, knocking chairs over, yelling at kids, intimidating people in his classroom, trying to intimidate the adults around him. And he was tough. He was a tough kid. I think, some of that, he just had all these emotions and didn't know what to do with them. And I don't think he understood that.
Right.
And so he spent quite a bit of time in my office, and he did a lot of time in the drain-off stage, bang and kick, that kind of thing. And so we would work with him, what happened, and you talk to him, and you go through all the stages. And again, when they're little like that, you can't get into like real deep stuff, but you still want to let them know you're angry. Okay, that's fine. And that's okay. You have every right to be angry. But do you want to knock over the desk when you're angry? Should you do that? So we worked with him on that several times, and there was one point he actually had to have one-on-one teaching for about 3 months because he just couldn't be in the classroom. The other kids were scared, and he knew it, and so he would play up to it sometime. But we did that, and during that time he got some really good one-on-one attention, academically and just emotionally. And if he had a problem, somebody could attend to it right away. And he was the person that got paid attention to, and he didn't have to deal with 11 other people in the classroom. I think that helped him a lot. And after 3 months, he was able to say, I'm ready to go back into the classroom. I can do this. And we're like, okay, we think you can too. And so he went back into the classroom, and his behaviors, not that they disappeared completely, but were 100% much better. And did he still get angry? Yes. And did he still bang? Yes. Did he throw things? Not so much. Did he walk out of class when he was angry? Yes. Did he do it appropriately? Not always. But at least he wasn't hurting anybody or hurting himself or being intimidating. He just left. He didn't come to my office. He knew where to go. So you have to have some leeways on that stuff. And just as it was the greatest thing, because as he's getting older, you can see and you saw it. You see all these changes in him, and you see him, Yeah, he still has pieces where he's got to work on it, but he actually attached to us.
Absolutely.
You know, and some more than others. The teacher that he spent 3 months with has an awesome bond with her even still today. I know I get messages from him every once in a while still today. So I think that speaks to the LSCI process. Even though he's not here with us anymore, he still reaches out to us. And not all the time. And not necessarily because he needs something.
Right.
But just, I think sometimes because he just needs to know we're still here.
Yeah.
And if he needs our help, that he knows that we're still here. So he's not with us anymore in our high school program, but he is in high school. And the last I heard from him was doing okay.
Yeah.
I think trying to play some sports in high school and, you know, keeping his grades up, that kind of thing. So it's fun. It's a fun process to watch, and it's rewarding.
That kind of growth,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
He came in what grade?
Second,
Yeah,
I do believe.
That feels right to me too. And I started working with him in 7th grade, and he was not the kid that he was in 2nd grade. He had learned so much from that process and that time that you put in. And I just want to ask you one more question. What is the role of relationship in that whole thing? I know what it was for him. I've got it in my head. But how do you see relationship with LSCI, CPI?
Relationship is huge.
Mm-hmm.
That is like the first and foremost thing that has to be in place. And that's nothing that's going to happen overnight.
Right.
I mean, I've been here 27 years. You've been here longer because you're older than me. But
Am I?
but if you don't have that relationship, it's not going to work the same. And we tell new staff that all the time. We tell new staff, if you're dealing with a kid and you're having a situation, and I walk into the room and you say, "Can you help me?" and I do the same things that you did, they're going to do it because they know me and they know I have the relationship with them. And that's the difference. Don't take it personal. It's because they know with me how it's going to go, how it's going to roll, how it's going to end out. They don't know that with you yet.
Yeah.
It'll come, but relationship is huge.
And the longer you're here, if one kid knows it, that helps too, because the other kids know that they can trust you as well.
Yes.
And part of it is because you put the time in. When we learned LSCI, there was a teacher, professor at Augustana University in Sioux Falls, Martin Brokenleg, who was one of the main people who created LSCI, created the Circle of Courage and those kinds of things as a new way of looking at dealing with students. And he always talked about relationships in this way. He would always say you can't microwave relationships.
And that's a good way to put it, because I think adults come in and think because they're adult and they're in this position, they should automatically have this relationship. And that is definitely not the way it works.
Right.
And if I'm a house parent, I sometimes think that new staff think if they say no, that's going to hinder the relationship. Yeah. And that is not true. Because any kid needs to know that there are limits. And if you don't have any limits, they're not going to know what to trust and what not to trust. And so that relationship is going to suffer. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It takes years to build that solid working relationship with a student to the point where they'll trust and you can work through things easier. Somebody that you know better than I do is going to be able to work through a situation with you better than they would me. And that's okay because of the relationship.
Yep. So if I'm hearing you right, everything you've said, and from watching your career for the many years that we've been here, it's going to take time.
Yep.
It's going to take listening. It's going to take an open heart and an open mind, and those relationships will come.
Yes.
And I think they have.
Yes.
And you've done a great job, and I thank you for being a guest on this podcast, Jennie. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It was a good time.
Absolutely. So once again, Jennie Schilling was my guest here today on Hóčhoka at the center of the St. Joseph's Indian School campus. Here we are. We've been talking about issues that are central to Native American education. So until next time, Stay centered, and we'll see you then.